Hey, Vsauce.
Gavin here. Was the Cold War really cold? I would say so. Here we are going another practical history review. Let's take a journey back in time. That's more like it. Now that I have your attention, I would like to let you in on a little insight of the Cold War. Before the Cold War took place, Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill all met to find a solution for Germany after World War II. This was called the Yalta Conference. Although Stalin agreed to many things Roosevelt and Churchill wanted during the conference, the alliance between the Soviet Union and the US was unraveling. Stalin agreed to help fight the war against Japan and to allow Eastern European countries to have free elections. In 1945, the United Nations was created to help the members be protected from aggression. As part of the UN, the General Assembly was created as an assembly of members from each nation that would vote on world issues. Even though the Soviet Union and the US agreed on some issues, they had many differing opinions after the war that affected their goals. This is mainly because of the issues that each nation faced after World War II. The Soviet Union suffered far more than the United States did. The Soviet Union believed that they needed to shield themselves from invasion because of the hundreds of years of invasion that the region has endured in the past. The Soviet Union installed communist governments in neighboring nations to the west border to blockade itself from further invasion. After Roosevelt died, these actions caused the new President Harry Truman to adopt a foreign policy. This policy was called containment. The goal of the foreign policy was to stop communism from spreading and to limit Soviet influence. 71, 72, 73. Truman then instituted a new controversial action called the Truman Doctrine. This was the supporting of nations who rejected communism. Secretary of State George Marshall came up with a program to rebuild Western Europe. This was in response to the Soviet Union wanting to keep their former enemy, Germany, weak, unlike me. 75, 76, 77. As Europe was rebuilding, the US, France, and Britain took their armies out of Germany so that Germany could form one nation, but the Soviet Union disagreed. This caused West Berlin to be held hostage by the Soviet Union. Supplies were cut off that were needed for living, but the United States and the Allies flew in food and supplies needed for survival. These actions were the ones that led to the beginning of the Cold War between the US and the Soviet Union. Throughout the Cold War, both of the nations used different forms of propaganda. This was used to create a false understanding of the enemy side and to sway public opinion. I like this one. Military alliances were beginning to form, which were NATO and the Warsaw Pact. NATO was an alliance between the US and Canada, while the Warsaw Pact was an alliance between the Soviet Union and the neighboring European countries. The United States had access to atomic bombs, and the Soviets developed and exploded their own in 1949 to try to keep up. In the next several decades, these two countries raced to develop a more potent deadly bomb, and eventually leading to the discovery of the hydrogen bomb. After the Soviets developed an ICBM, the United States stepped up in developing satellites and spying material. If the Cold War never happened, then we would not be where we are in the development of space technology. Although it was a time of great fear and high tensions, the Cold War was a time of great human technology advancement. Well, looks like it's time to go. Thanks for joining me today on our Practical History Review, and have a good one.